Ok, bueno, una vez más, muchas gracias por unirse a este nuevo Limbir, el Limbir de noviembre. En esta oportunidad tenemos a Spencer Easton, un especialista en lo que es Takt Construction, Takt Planning en la industria de la construcción en particular, y que hoy nos va a dar una pequeña charla, un resumen de los puntos más importantes y compartir con nosotros algo a lo que él se dedica, todo lo que es Takt Planning y que es una parte importante de lo que es Lean Construction. Fede, no sé si querés hacer unas palabras.
Bueno, hola a todos, gracias por haberse sumado. Bueno, me presento, soy Federico Tessing, actualmente estoy como director ejecutivo del LSI Argentina. Hacemos estos eventos una vez por mes, tratamos de siempre traer temáticas para seguir profundizando en nuestro conocimiento, mostrar ejemplos de la Argentina y de todo el mundo, de cómo se viene aplicando las metodologías de Lean, que están basadas en la filosofía, básicamente. Así que, bueno, estamos contentos de que se amplíe el público, de que esto prenda cada vez más, y bueno, que todos tengan oportunidades de mostrar lo que están haciendo. Así que, bueno, acá en este grupo que veo acá, ya hubo personas que presentaron también sus aplicaciones, así que no hace falta ser experto, simplemente empezar. Y bueno, de ahí nacen las oportunidades de mostrar lo que uno está haciendo, porque lo que queremos realmente del LSI es fomentar ejemplos reales de la vida real, así que está bueno que se animen. Así que bueno, Spencer, welcome here in our group, Argentina. We are very grateful for having you here. And so thank you very much for your time.
Right. So, whenever you want, Spencer, we're ready for you. Thank you.
Perfect. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. All right, here. Now let me see if I can get that coming through. I also have my slides that I'm going to share in the chat if anybody would like to either follow along or have them for after. And I apologize, I'll try to speak slowly because I know for most of you, English is a second language. So I'll try to be cognizant of that. But let's go ahead and start the share. I'm going to do entire screen for this one. Share. Just miss. Okay. I'm guessing everybody can see my screen. So today I'm honored to be here with you, helping to spread the idea of Takt Planning. This is a fun little slide deck that I put together, and hopefully this will help engage how we might start applying it in the Argentina market, which is super exciting. It's been spreading around the world, and if anyone has any questions, I know we have time for Q&A. If it's something that you feel like I'm going over, I don't know if raising your hand or stopping me, I'm totally okay with that throughout. But I know that we have time for Q&A at the end too, so super excited to more engage and less like talk about this stuff. But I am very passionate about Takt Planning. So the idea of what I got introduced to as Takt Planning was taught to me by a couple people out of Germany, and they called it Takt Planning and Takt Control. And you see this kind of icon over here to the left-hand side. This is an adaptation of an icon that they showed me that I've kind of tried to coalesce what my understanding of what they had taught. And this method, this practice, this theory, plus construction, in all cases that I've been able to test it or seen other people test it, has equaled better production. So it's exciting because these are things that are actually having an impact on us. again, I mentioned that the slides that you're seeing me go through right here, it's on a Miro board, so it's one link. You see it in the chat. And also, if you are somewhere where you can't get to that, you can use this QR code right here. Or if you're watching this after and you wanted to access the slides, you should be able to pull up your phone and access them via this link right here. So I'll start in the beginning. And it's kind of the journey. And I have a lot of some of the things that I'll mention has come out of research and people's publications, on top of my own things that I've published about Takt Planning. And you'll see all those links down here at the bottom. Not all of them, but there's a number of them. There's a lot more that has gone into this, but I wanted to share some of the concepts here. But I did want to go back in time and kind of show the timeline of when these things kind of started. The first time it was used, Takt Planning, was in airplane and shipbuilding, and the thought process was then developed and shared with the Japanese and then Toyota, and hence why Toyota has Takt as one, or Takt Time, or Takt as one of its core principles. It comes all from the same place. But the first Takt Planning was done in 1954, which actually is before CPM. CPM was invented in 1959, or at least that's the first time that it was published about by the company DuPont here in the United States. But Takt Planning precedes that by a few years and has been the concepts of it have been used in various different applications. Some used it early on in the US and referred to it as SIPs, short interval production scheduling or planning, and kind of took a life of its own, but in a specific vein. And others from UC Berkeley and from other folks in Germany in tandem were kind of developing these ideas and researching the concepts and seeing how they really applied to construction. And so there's a rich history and timeline of where these concepts come from. And these concepts are rooted in Lean. Federico was talking about that when he was doing the short introduction to, is, all of these things from Lean, they're interwoven into what we're trying to do to improve the industry. And the three Lean principles that I was taught from a gentleman that came from Toyota, actually Taiichi Ohno's number 2 in command. It's a gentleman by the name of Shishiro Nakao. I'll talk about him later, but the three things that he has taught me is that the three fundamental principles for any improvement are takt time, one-piece flow, and pull. And it's an interesting combo. And the thing that Takt Planning does for us is it tries to apply some of these principles to how we plan and execute work. Hence Takt Planning and Takt Control, the planning and the control or the execution of the actual work. And some of the help that I received was looking at how we traditionally plan our work and seeing that it is kind of this, lots of different things connected together, a big logic diagram, a network diagram, the critical path method, have you. And, an upgrade from that, a lot of us have learned, at least in the Lean circles, Last Planner, which focuses on workflow, right? And that's where we get kind of to this level right here, is how do we get workflow happening really well for our trades or the folks that are doing the work, the last planners, right? And one step beyond that is, okay, the work needs to flow, but also the people need to flow, the materials need to flow. And so there's lots of other different flows that need to happen for our work. And that's where we're trying to align all of these flows to see if we can get a common pace for the work that is happening both on the actual, whatever it is being constructed. It could be a hospital, it could be a bridge, it could be a nuclear facility, whatever it is, whatever that work can be chunked into, that should flow. And then also the trades or the crews that are doing that work should be able to flow from item to item to item. And hence, if we can get to a common pace of production, Takt, then it will look something more like this and giving us a lot more structure and stability than what we traditionally have with our standard methods, if that makes sense. So again, like I talked about, there's workflow, crew flow, and then the order in which you're doing the build is that logistics flow. We're going to start on the north side and we're going to work south, or we're going to start in room 101 and then work to 205 or whatever. That's the order or the logistics flow, right? So we're trying to align all of those flows and get that visible flow structure. A lot of folks that work within Takt refer to, a train. And I created this image to try to hone in the major concepts that we talk about within Takt Planning so we can visualize what it is we're talking about. A lot of folks refer to wagons or boxcars or time frames. Some people call this takts or blocks, and it's trying to refer to a moment of time that is at the takt time, meaning this green box right here is what takes the takt time. That represents the takt time. And then the work that is within it needs to be able to happen within the takt time. So how we break up this work or how we package that work can affect the cycle time, right? The actual time it takes. What we need it to take is the takt time. The time it actually takes is the cycle time. And if it takes longer than the takt time, that's not going to work. If it takes way too less than the takt time, that's also a problem. So it's right sizing that work, the tools, the people, the process, all of that, so that we can try to align it to what the pace should be for everyone to achieve that continuous flow through the build. So that's wagons, the green blocks. The work packages, that's what I refer to. A lot of people call these activities. You can call it whatever you like, but that is the actual work itself, and that is packaged within a wagon. There's an important distinction because the wagon is more representative of the takt time, while the work package is more representative of the cycle time. So you're having two sides of the coin, if that makes sense. Another important part of the process is understanding that to achieve this, we really should get down to the third level, which is the work step or the standard work. So I have up here standard work process and steps that must be taken to complete a work package. So that is the list of steps. So like drywall, for instance, there is a standard process that we always do if we're installing drywall or cinder bricks or CMU blocks, whatever we want to call those. There's a standard process that we would follow in whatever area to install that. Now, the quantity of that might vary a little from area to area, and that's why trying to figure out what those zones are or what it is that we're building is one of the first steps that we go through when we're doing Takt Planning. But this helps to kind of visualize, this is the sequence of work. This is how we're trying to package those things together. I have a similar image that kind of dives into it a little bit deeper so you can kind of see the difference between the train, the pace setter, which is kind of the engine, that's the customer demand. You can see it kind of in an example up here. This is what a sequence or a train would look like and how this is a takt time, this would be a takt time, right? So you can see there could be different numbers of work packages because maybe those don't take the full takt time. And so we're packaging those in so that it more fulfills that space of time. Another example, the same type of image, kind of showing this like this is another example where we can start to see the difference between the wagon, the work package, the work step with an actual physical example of a Takt plan. So here you can see this is a wagon, but also we have one work package within that wagon. So you see the wagon is represented by this, but the work package is represented by the brown, right? So that's what's filled inside of it. And then that brown or that work package would have a certain number of work steps. So you're seeing the work steps or the yellow. It really is what we would, if we were to click on this, what are the steps that we would need to go through in order to do that blue work or that green work or that red work, right? We're getting down into what are the steps. And some platforms have more than just the standard work. You could have a logistic tasks or quality processes, material steps, inventorying, equipment, handover, personnel. Like there's lots of things that you can add in here to what is standard. That's kind of what this shows right here. That's a lot of that type of stuff. And that's what is compiled of the actual work package itself. It marries in nicely with what, not sure if anyone's familiar with advanced work packaging, but it's kind of the same similar type idea, something to look into. Now, why all of that matters is because, just like I mentioned earlier, here's an example of a takt plan. And you're seeing here is a zone of work. Here's another zone. It would be a different zone. And so we would have, a number of zones that we would need to flow through. And you're seeing that there are two amounts of whatever the time is. If it's 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months, whatever the time frame is, that's showing you that pace of work. But not just the production work is important here. All the other items would need to flow in order to support this production. So if we're not procuring the material, obviously this won't work like that. If we don't have the material in order to install, that's not going to work. So we would need procurement flowing to be able to support all of these different work packages in this takt plan in order to have this happen. And that's just procurement. Billing, quality, logistics, design, buyout, all of this stuff would need to flow in order to make this happen. A lot of us are used to focusing on those things in our make-ready planning. If any of you are familiar with Last Planner System, so that's something that we're semi-familiar with. But understanding what is the pace our logistics would have to go at in order to support this production. That's a different question, and it would pose a different answer if we're going to flow the work like this, if that makes sense. Now, to break up the work and kind of talk about the 3 different things, the wagon, the work packages, and the work step, there's a model called the 3-level model. And this is what was taught to me, is when you're doing really long-term planning, when you're thinking about a project at a macro level, the thing that you're trying to identify is a different unit than if you're doing daily planning, or if you're talking about how to get to improve performance of a particular task. Like those are 2 different vantage points, 2 different views of the project. And if you're looking at that macro level, the thing that you want to try to identify are how many wagons do we have within this phase of work. So the unit that you're looking at the macro level really is the wagons. So you can see right here, there's kind of an image of big blocks, and that's what we're trying to identify. And then as we move into more of the production type schedule, where we have trade partners on board, we have the subcontractors, we have the foremen that will work on finalizing the plan with us. We want to get into those nitty-gritty details of actual times and stuff like that. That's where we dive into like that phase planning. That's where we dive into what the Germans call the norm level. But this is where we're trying to identify what are all the work packages. How do we fit all the work within these wagons that we've identified? Do they fit how we initially thought, or is there some tweaking that we need to do that helps us to give a structure here, and then we finalize it here? And then going down into that micro level, that's where we're really diving into what are the steps that it would take in order to hit the takt times that we were saying up here. So it gives us this 3-level system, gives us a structure to identify those 3 units, and then help us to identify how to move through that from that structured milestone strategic type planning all the way down to task management and resource and crew efficiency type conversations and planning and execution, if that makes sense. So I'll move from kind of a high level, and I'll show you a couple examples of some of the things that we focus on and what it kind of looks like. The first thing that I talked about that we usually encourage people to start with is start to try to identify what the zones are that you're going to flow the trades through. So an example would be like if you're doing, vertical construction or buildings, right? You'd want to try to understand, okay, they might not be the same exact square footage areas or zones, because in one area it might be more work for the electrician and less work in a different area, or more work for the plumber and less work in a different area. So what you're trying to do is not size zones by square footage, but by actual work density or amount of work that is in that space. If you can try to level that as much as possible and group phases of work of like produced type areas, then you're going to be really, really close to being able to flow the work at a common pace, because all of that work is leveled across the areas as much as possible. And that's the first thing to try to realize. There's a couple different examples on here where here's a phase of work where we did it for just the roofing part of a project or the interiors on non-repetitive things. So you can see the zones look very, very different, but they had close to the same number of workspaces. Or you can look at something that was highly repetitive and using, digital BIM models to help us identify quantities and how much is in one zone versus another, or one bay, and trying to right size those so that it makes sense. There's a lot of different methods, but it's trying to identify what are those common amounts of work that we can do repeating so that we can flow that work at a common pace. So that's usually around the first thing to do. And the second is to identify the work packages in the sequence or the train of work. And this is where a lot of people get it wrong, because they just start thinking of activities and not thinking about work packages as things that can house a lot of information and a lot of standardization. This is an image that was shared with me, and I absolutely love it. There's so much content, there's so much data, there's so much preparation, there's so much planning that goes in for a single activity to be planned. That the word activity, a lot of times to us, denotes just effort or work that has to happen. And we don't really give credence to the amount of preparation and planning that would need to go into any activity to be able to start on time and be able to continue without stopping. And so there's a lot of things that need to be taken into account. And this kind of shows the complexity of a single work package and why we need to be thinking about more than just, a name in a schedule. Like there's so much more things that we need to do. And we all know that from working in the industry and in construction, there's a lot that goes into making things real in the field or actually be built beyond just putting down something in a schedule. So this is a good example. And to show this in kind of a real life example, this is a software that I use quite often. This is not something that I recommend for people that are just starting. This is if you have this as a standard operating procedure, Takt Planning, and you're wanting to get to the next level, this kind of has a lot of good processes built into it. But most of the time I start people with Excel if they want to start off, because it gives you like 90% of everything that you need. But here's a good example of this singular work package. When you click on this one work package right here up in this top left-hand corner, it opens up a window that shows you all of the extra data that has to go along with that individual work package. And then you can see all of the individual steps, not just the work steps, but like I talked about, logistics steps, design steps, your quality, your defects, your material, your equipment, all of that stuff that goes into it. And then you can dive even deeper into that next level. So you're getting down into that micro level where you're saying, okay, these are the 3 steps that we need to do in order to complete this, whatever this work package is, right? And then you can dive even deeper on that, and you can say, okay, backfilling, how much backfill do we have? You can actually link elements within your BIM model so you can get actual quantities and come up with what an actual production rate for this should be based on what your typical installation rates are. So if you're tracking that and you know that and you're getting information from the model, this is when we start to really harness the benefit of using building information modeling or BIM to connect to how we actually plan, but then also go to execute the work. So we know how much it's going to take, and then we can actually refer to those actual elements within the model. So a really great way to jump into that. Here's another comparison of a similar type thing. And this is it's supposed to be a little video here. We'll see if it turns on. It's a little GIF. But basically what I'm trying to showcase is as you click on these different work packages, it'll show you in the model what elements or how many elements or how many of those things you need to install within that zone, if that makes sense. So each of these rows representing a zone, if you click on each of these individual work packages, it shows you. So if anyone's interested in kind of seeing how this works in this, get the link to this. You'll have to download this and see what it looks like. It's a little teeny video you'll be able to see. But it appears as though it's not working for me right now, but I think I might just have slow internet or something. Trying to give it a second. Anyway, so here's another example of going down to that really nitty-gritty detail, pulling up a work package and seeing the amount of detail and the actual IFC links and how much quantity you have, and then what your production rate would have to hit in order to meet the takt time. So you're seeing that connection again from the production side to what we would need to hit, right? The actual duration of that takt time versus cycle time. You're seeing that marriage from the information that we would have in the IFC model and be able to bring it in. Again, this is another one of those little videos. It's not pulling up for me, but again, if you click on these slides, you should be able to download it and see the video. Another good example of the power of using Takt is going down to that micro level. Helps us to see where our problems material-wise are, and getting down to the actual bill of materials for each individual work package. So instead of having a separate spreadsheet that you might manage procurement with, or trying to link it to your CPM, or adding all of that as kind of other activities in a different work breakdown structure in your CPM, this is housed underneath a work package saying that this material, right, it's this quantity, it's this type, it's, all approvals can be done through a system like this. So it's starting to marry all of that data into one place so that we really can start to leverage some of the great tools that we have coming out, like AI or other things. So we're able to cross-reference these data, these great amounts of data that we have for our projects, so that we can improve moving forward. Another good example that I really like about Takt Planning, here's an example of that make-ready type planning, or a backlog of work that is ready to go. There's a couple different ways to do it. I've seen people do it kind of like this, where they're doing constraint management with a list of things that they want to make sure that they have prepared or made ready, right? We want to make sure that we have all the people. So we want to make sure, yep, we have all the people that are going to come. Do we have scaffolding? Yep, we've accounted for scaffolding. Do we have the IFC drawings? Do we have the schedule? Do we have the permit? Do we have the safety, right? And just going through and checking, yep, we did that for this task now, yep. And once you have all these checked off, yes, you have this survey or this whatever these activities are ready to go, hence prepared. A way that you can do that in Takt Planning is you look at your area in which you're going to do your look ahead or your make ready, and you can see however many weeks in advance, like that's where, or days, or however long into the future you want to look to start preparing for that work. And a cool thing that I like to do is identify those and say, okay, these are the work packages that are ready. And then over here, you kind of see the same image where, I haven't filtered out all the rest of the work, but you can see these are ones that still are not ready. So I know where to focus my time and efforts. This is all the stuff that is ready to go. So I can see how much runway I have in front of me that is ready to actually work. So another great way to visualize that work that is ready versus the work that is not ready, that I need to focus on and put attention to. So a great example of how to physically and visually do that make-ready planning. So in kind of in summarizing kind of that whole thought process, Takt Planning really is trying to visualize work packages. It's trying to visualize what the work will act, what we want it to do, what it should do is flow at workflow and trade flow to a common pace, and understand what that takt time actually is. So it's a great way to visualize what that looks like. Now I have a great example here. I'll see if I can I want to make sure that I'm sharing my sound. And if that doesn't work, then I might have to make sure that y'all can see this. Hold on 1 second. I'm actually going to double check. I'm going to stop presenting for 2 seconds, and then I'm going to present again and just make sure. Yep. Also share tab audio. Right here.
Spencer, can I make you a question?
Oh, yes, go ahead. While I'm pulling this up, go ahead and ask your question.
At the beginning, you were talking about the 3 principles. One is the pull. Could you give us an example in this breakdown? Where is the pull management?
Yes, for sure. Let me get back to sharing here, and I can answer your question, because that's actually a really good one. And I think pull is something that eludes us as well, on top of takt time. So that this is a really good topic to kind of dive into when you're talking about planning. Okay, let me go back to share. How do I get back? Share screen. And I'll answer your question, then I'll show you this video that I have right here. Share. Okay. Okay. So, so to answer your question, let me go to this video, and I'll actually pause right on the image itself, because it's a really good example. Right here. So you see this is the same image that I referred to at the very beginning. The colors are a little bit different, but same image. And so Ezekiel, was that you that asked that question, right? About pull? So we have customers, and we all are customers, right? But in construction, most of the time what we're doing is we are pushing work. And that's the opposite of pull. And pull, in the sense of what we do in construction, mainly comes in what we are passing off to the next thing in the sequence. So if you have this sequence of events that needs to happen for this area, and it's the same sequence here and here all the way down, and hence why we have that common flow or common production flow. When this first person or this first crew is done with their work, what they're doing is they're not doing that work and then moving on to here. They're passing this work, this area that has that work complete, to this trade that's second in line. So this person needs that first area to have this first work done in order for their task, or task number 2, to start, or work package number 2 to start, or the second wagon to start if there's multiple work packages, right? So the pull is created when we are providing not what we can physically do. And I get a lot of people saying, well, this first task right here, if it can go faster, why don't you let it go faster? My answer always is, well, there's nothing necessarily wrong with that, other than that wouldn't be creating pull. You'd be overproducing. And the second you start to let someone overproduce, you allow someone else to go at whatever rate they can go. So instead of proposing to folks, hey, I want you to go as fast as you can, what we're proposing is, how might we all go at the same pace? That's a very different concept. And so with the concept of pull, like you were asking, if someone needs something that is coming after you, instead of looking forward and say, oh, I can go this fast, your whole sole focus is looking backwards and saying, you need this area after me. What do you need in order for me to leave it exactly how you need it in order to do your work? That's a very different question, right? So we get those kind of conversations in pull planning, but that's just in planning the work. When we go to execute the work, we don't set up pull, and we don't really focus on pull, at least in the last planner system, from an actual execution standpoint. A lot of folks that do takt planning, though, will set up something called handoffs or handovers. And what it really is a contract between you and the person behind you saying, I am done with my work. All my stuff is out of this area. You are now free to come into this work. And the other person saying, yes, I see that the work is done. It's done so that it allows me to come in. It is clean. Everything's good. And I can do my work now. So the first person is certifying that, yes, all their work is done. There's no punch list items, that the area is clean, and they have all their material and tools either ready to go or going or gone out of the space. And the person coming in saying, yes, I agree to that. And so that some teams even do that as like a formal, actual document and a kind of almost like an inspection where you walk through the spaces and you say, okay, you're done, you're coming in. Do you guys agree that this handoff is happening good? So this actual pull is happening, and the person behind is being brought into the space because the person in front is ready and done and bringing them along. And if that's done along the whole chain, then everyone is making that movement all at the same time. Everyone in that train or that sequence of events makes that movement at the takt time, right? And so that's that first step or first kind of hurdle to get over is, can you get used to everyone making that same movement all at the same time, that takt time movement, right? So that's an example of how we introduce and then establish pull on our job sites. Was that a fair response to the question?
I'm still thinking about it, but I think yes. It's this thought about we all are customers of someone else, so we need to treat ourselves as internal customers. No, the example you gave us recently.
And it's something to wrestle with, because that's something very different, at least in the U.S. market. That is very different for us to get over that. You know, I was contracted. If I'm the electrician, I got to come and do this electrical work. So I'm going to get in and do my work and then get out of there. And that's a much different sport than saying, how do we bring everyone together and create a shared winning solution that everyone can come and flow through their work and leave without stopping. That's what we're trying to achieve, is having everybody having a win-win, right? So it's a team environment versus I was contracted to do this specific work. I'm going to get in, I'm going to do whatever, like I'm going to do my stuff, then I'm going to get out. I don't care what the rest of y'all are doing. I did my stuff, right? Like that's a different mentality. It's a different approach. And so turning that around to think about how do you pull the person behind you in that sequence is very different and feels somewhat strange to folks that have never really, seen that happen in construction. It was super weird to me when I first started trying it. So that's just from my experience.
It resonates with the example of this book, the Goal from Goldratt.
Yes.
When he gives the example where he goes out to hiking with his boys and they all align with the slowest pace. No, so
yes.
How can we take some lifts and make him go faster? I mean, we can help him to take out his bag, no? So they all go at the same rhythm and they don't overproduce, like you just said. Yeah.
Yep. And that's the important concepts from the theory of constraints or Eli Goldratt, like you're talking about, the concept of bottlenecks, and you're not going to produce anything beyond what the bottleneck can produce. So at a minimum, even if you can't do anything about the bottleneck, like they tried to do with Herbie in that example in the book, yeah. Right? Taking stuff out of the bag, making it less heavy for him so he could be more efficient, right? That's kind of that leveling effort, right? How do you level stuff so it's not all the burden on one task? How do you make a sequence or the work packages itself, not just the spaces leveled, but also the sequence, so that it's, we have a takt time and that's what we need to hit. And that should be based pretty much on what the bottleneck can produce, or the bottleneck will inform us if our takt time is real or not, or how to establish a takt time. But once we know that, and then maybe one resource has way too much and the other doesn't have enough, right? Like we can try to level that in a way within the actual sequence of work. So these are all concepts that have helped define some processes of what we do when we're doing takt planning, so that we can try to apply some of those principles from the goal or from some other great examples in kind of the lean space. Any other questions on that before I proceed? Great question, by the way. So I'm gonna share this and then go through a couple of the examples that I have. That's the remainder of the time, and then we'll have about 10 minutes for further questions. This is the company that I currently work for during my day job, Mortensen Construction. We put together this little video to try to help describe what Takt Planning is to folks. Now at Mortensen, they started calling Takt Planning flow construction. So you'll see me refer to flow construction in the video, and you can replace that with Takt Planning. That's what we call flow construction is what the industry calls Takt Planning. So it's the same thing, but this is a good little video that helps to describe some of the things at a high level, what we've kind of been talking about. Let me know if you can hear the audio and everything too. And if this doesn't work, we can skip this. I'm having problems with video today for sure. Come on. This is how it always goes. Come on. Oh, well. Oh, there we go. You all hear that?
At Mortensen, we are delivering more and more of our projects using flow construction. So what is flow construction? Flow construction is a system for planning, scheduling, and executing work that focuses on as much.
I'm stopping it. It's being too choppy. I apologize for the technical issue.
Do you want to share us the link, the YouTube links, and we try to pass it, or?
Yeah, I'll drop it in the chat. We'll see if that helps. It is on the Miro board that I shared. So if you're interested and we're not able to show it today, it is on the board. So you will be able to see it if you use that link. But I do apologize for the technical issues, technical difficulties.
I can share my screen. And
yeah, see if you can share. See if you can share that. We'll try one more time, and then if not, we'll just move on. It's fine. We can move on from that. I apologize. I did put the link in the chat again. If you're wanting to go and watch that, there's some great other content, I guess, that you'll be able to find on that Miro board. So above and beyond, and there's some other stuff too here that I'll point out that I'm not gonna share. That's on this that you can go and research. So a good example. This is a case study of a $1.5 billion job, and it shows we have 26 Takt plans that are all integrated together into one overall master plan. So it's a job, I think it's the biggest that's ever been done with Takt Planning. And this is here close to where I currently live, and you can just see the amount of planning and work that has gone into this and all of the different Takt plans that create basically building this project. A lot of work went into that. There's another case study of the Empire State Building. This is line of balance, but one thing that makes it, in my opinion, Takt Planning is they didn't just take the differing rates of production as given. They leveled the production and they squoze them together. That's exactly what we do in Takt Planning. We're looking at how do you align that that production work and then get it flowing at the same pace. That's what they did at the Empire State Building. This, I believe it was 120 some odd floors. This building, from nothing to it being done and people moving into the space, took 13 months. And that's a rate at which we can't touch today. And I attribute it to the manufacturing or lean approach that they took to the Empire State Building. And this precursed CPM, and they did an amazing job using these.
That's
same
more than 100 years ago.
Yes, yes. And that's what's crazy about this. This is such a good example because of what they did to align that production and squeeze out that time so that everything was flowing at the right rate. And they talk about how the metal was coming into the building and it was still warm from, you know, them fabricating the metal. They were going so fast, right? There's some other things that were kind of cons about it, like that there were some people that died on the Empire State Building, so that's not good. So we should learn from that, but not exactly try to replicate it because we don't want to be unsafe about stuff. So there's some of those things too. There's some other examples I'll just go through quickly. There is an example that a lot of people learn from the Pentagon renovation, the same type of thing. There's a case study I have here, and there's a video if you want to get on here and look about it. This is a hospital campus. You can see right here they applied Takt Planning. There was work done on an Indian reservation here close to my house. So and lots of good content on here if you want to dive in on how these teams applied it. Me personally, I've helped to implement Takt on currently over 300 projects in construction and counting. Me personally, there's been other people that I have helped, but they've kind of implemented. I don't really count those. So there's been lots of different types of construction, whether it's in roads, bridges, energy and infrastructure, you name it, manufacturing, hospitals, hotels, you name it. Most every single type of construction has been tried with Takt Planning, and it seems to work. And I'll leave you with 3 last things, then we'll open it up for questions. If it were me, I suggest 3 things to people, and they are: learn the principles and the system, not the tools. 2, do one thing at a time. Don't try to do an overhaul of your entire system because of some presentation or someone tells you that. Like, that's not how real life works. We can't go from 0 to 60. We need to take it in steps. So chunk it out. That's 1 step at a time. And then number 3, this is my sensei from Japan, and I'll go down to that the last slide. I kind of have an image of him. So this is Shishiro Nakao. He was second in command to Taiichi Ono in Toyota when they created the Toyota production system. He's the last. He is the most former. He is the current living expert for, in my opinion, for the Toyota production system, or what we call lean today. And he points to that it's not about are you doing a specific thing? It's where are you at on your journey? Are you moving? Are you growing? Because growth looks a lot different than just applying things. So think about just continually improving. Obviously, continuous improvement, we all know that. But that's easier said than done. And making sure that we are moving on a journey which looks like trying things, which means that some things won't go right, which means that there will be failures. And we need to be okay with that. And so that's the last thing that I would suggest is failure is a part of trying. And so understand the principles, do one thing at a time, and don't be afraid of failing, because none of us have it 100% right, or else everyone would be doing it because it would be a silver bullet that we could pass on, which it's not. So I hope this helped to shed some light on what Takt Planning looks like, what it's based on, how it kind of works, and so forth. I'll go to one of my slides that I have some good content if you want to look up more into some of the different people that I work with. Takting is some of the software that you saw. There's a simulation that they do. Really, really great people. They've done a lot of research. This is my personal online training, and then there's the Lean Construction blog. They have a lot of great content for free that you can look into. So wherever you're getting your information, just make sure you start your journey and start applying some of these principles to your work so that you can reap the benefits. So I'll stop talking. What questions, what thoughts from the group?
You mentioned, you just mentioned about, I have two questions. The first one is, you talk about work packages, about standard work procedures, and of course we are all building prototypes, because no building is equal to the next building. They can be similar, but they are not in the same location, so we're always building prototypes. So then you define the packages, you define the standard work. How does continuous improvement get? I mean, you define some first standard and then you start improving it. How does that affect? Could you does that affect to the takt time, or is it? Or can you shorten it? Can you or can you redistribute people? How can you give us an example and how continuous improvement did changes on the go in the project, in this kind of takt time projects?
Yeah.
Was it clear? Was it clear enough? I don't know.
Yes.
Maybe
Yes.
Sergio can help me to.
No. That's a really good question. So the answer is, if we're starting a new project that we've never done before, how does standardized work play into it when we're building, like in your words, prototypes? We're starting from scratch, basically, and then if you get better over time, I mean, you will get faster over time. So if you're starting here and then you're working, then you will get more and more efficient over time, which is the case, right? The more we do a thing, the better we get at that thing. There is ramp up time. That is a real thing. A lot of people that I work with are doing things like, whether it's a first run study or it is, giving a ramp up week where they're working on not fake, but like I was doing an example with a solar job where they didn't have extra solar panels to install, so they took sheets of plywood and started to figure out, okay, how do we do this for this project with this customer, with these design requirements, so on and so forth. So they were practicing what the build would be like with the tools and the equipment and the processes, the people in that actual space, so that when it came time to produce, they knew within that first week that they could achieve the takt time. And so it was that kind of process. And what they were working on, to your point, was that standard work. What is the procedure that we're going to do in order to hit that takt time, if that makes sense?
They trained before starting the actual project.
Yeah, so that's one example of doing that. Another one would be, we have a group that goes around and they build a similar type build, but it is in different spots, and they do tweak the design. But we have preferential trade partners that we've worked on to get their standard work for certain work packages to a certain level. So then we would say, okay, because we're not starting from scratch on how you do this type of work, yeah, we're going to change the amount, and maybe the material changes a little bit, but the installation process is still the exact same. If that's the case, then we're not really starting from zero. We might be starting from 80, and we just have to figure out that last 20 in order to establish us hitting that takt time consistently over the areas or zones that we would have, if that makes sense. So I think there's a couple different ways, at least that I've seen people address what you're talking about. And I think that's the thing that we need to wrestle with is, to your point, if we're starting a new production line, or we're at least having to reestablish a production line, what are things that we would need to do in order to better set ourselves up for success on a project? And whether we're doing takt or not, that's a great question anyway, because what you said applies whether we're doing takt or not. We're starting a new job just in a new location. It might be a similar, it might be completely different. It might be something no one's ever built before, right? So us understanding that, if we're talking about predictability of a plan or of a schedule like that, those are the things that we need to start thinking about in order to be to have a better outcome for us hitting a targeted end date, if that makes sense. So great question. What else?
I had a second question, but I wanna if someone else wants to ask first, I leave it for afterwards. Well, my second question was about how do you merge this with the traditional last planner methodology? Is it like this weekly review, or how does it look in real life?
Yeah, a lot of people try to do that. I've seen varying levels of success. It can be done. I've seen it done. And actually, this example right here, this video right here is a 27-minute long video of this general superintendent describing how he married the two philosophies together. You'll see his attempt at doing a weekly work plan. It's not in Excel. It's visual. It's actually on the boards that you see behind him. And what he would do is from the Takt plan, he would say, okay, this is where everyone needs to be at the end of the week. So he would go and he would write in black, and you can kind of see it right here. He would write in black, that's where you all need to be. How are you going to get there? And then the trades would go up and they would write up their little plan. Okay, I'm going to start in this corner. I'm going to do this. And they would draw that up there. And then he would talk to them every day. Okay, are you on track to still do this today, right? So that's kind of that daily huddle type approach, right? So you're seeing some of those things kind of mix together. But you see the whole idea of like the Takt time was that there was a movement every week and they had to be done. And so that he was making sure, okay, this is where you need to be. How are you going to get there? And then he'd work with the last planners to establish what that was. And then even in the planning for this, like they did a pull plan and that phase planning and created and established what the sequence was. But the work that they did before to establish what the zones were with the trades was crucial, because then it could be a copy and paste from one area to the next and the next, because they established, okay, these are the zones, and each of these zones represent generally the same amount of work. So if we do the sequence for one, it's like we're building the sequence for everything. So it helps your phase planning get a lot more efficient, where traditionally we do a ton of pull planning. When you couple it with Takt, when you have standard areas, you don't have to do as much, which is ideal, because pull planning, while it is really good to get everyone kind of concisely around what the sequence of work should be, it is very long and strenuous and right. So it can help with that. So yes, the two can marry, and here's a good example for you to dig into and see. So
Spencer, Matthias here. When a trade is falling behind, you have like weekly meetings to get all the teams ready to get to the other area or to the other plan. What would you do when you have a crew who is falling behind and you can switch all the trades between the plan or the floor plan?
yeah, that's a really good question. That's everyone's big worry is, okay, now that you have this, I don't see a lot of wiggle room in this. Like it has to go like this in order to hit that last date. And there's two things that come to my mind to answer the question for you. One is understanding capacity buffers, meaning something will go wrong in the system. So if we don't have some wiggle room within the plan, it's going to fail no matter what it is. So we need to have the use of capacity buffers in order to hit a target anyway. So that's number one. Number two, your question about meeting frequently so that we know, hey, you're falling behind. What do we do about that type thing? 100%. And usually where people start is around a Takt time of a week, right? So if you meet once a week, that's okay. not good, in my opinion, because what you're saying is you have 5 days worth of work and say that they did effectively 2 days worth of work and they're behind by 3 days. Well, now what are you going to do? The whole thing slides by 3 days. Versus if you're meeting daily, maybe a little bit better, where you could say, okay, did you hit your targets for today? Kind of like that example like I talked about before. If you're saying you need, let's say it's conduit or something that you need to install and you have 5 days and each day you're going to do 100 feet or 100 lineal feet. That means 100 each day equals 500 lineal feet. So that would tell us that we're good. So on day 1, did you install 100 lineal feet? No, we installed 80. Okay, why? And how do we make it? What do we do in order to get you up to 100 and also make up the lost production that we've experienced? So understanding the why, that's the variance that we learned in last planner system, right? Understand the variance of why that changed, and so that we can target those things and change them. But doing that live with a trade partner is the most important thing that a superintendent should be doing in his daily leader standard work, right? So for him to sit there and work with that trade to see, okay, your target for today was this. What do we do about that, right? And why? And how do we change that? Like all of those good conversations. Now that's better, but think about it in a scale, right? The bigger you aim, the bigger you miss, right? Aim big, miss big. Aim small, miss small. So you see in Toyota, like their takt times are 50 seconds, 55 seconds, something like that right now. Now, that might not be doable for us for decades. We might not be able to get down to that pace for decades. So for us, the bigger you aim, the bigger you have a potential of miss. The smaller you aim, the smaller you have potential for miss. So know what that feels like. I worked with a team that had a takt time of a 3-day takt time. And we walked out there and I said, okay, within 10 minutes, I can tell you that we're behind track or we're not on track. And they said, how do you know? Well, think about it. Where I watched 30 minutes worth of work. And if you can extrapolate that over the day, I know how much they should be installing almost by the minute. And if I'm not observing that, I'm already seeing that they're falling behind of what they should be doing. So we can act now. We can do something right now. We don't have to wait for a meeting at the end of the day even. Like we can do something now. Hey, foreman, come over here. Let's have a conversation. What's going on with this? Oh, the material, like we're having a hard time bringing it into the building because of this stuff up here. Well, let's go fix that so that we're not slowing down your production, right? It's finding those things at the source of deviation. That's the idea. So, Mateus, right to your point. It's yes, meetings are important, but knowing that if you're waiting a week, maybe that's not ideal because that could be a week's worth of work that you now just slide because we didn't do any of it. Or at least the stuff that we needed to have done, or right, and it probably won't go a whole week before we notice. But like that is a real consideration.
I think you have to be in the place in the moment when the production is happening all the time.
Yes,
Super important.
That's our job. That's our job as
Super
builders, as superintendents, as project managers. Even like the reason why we have jobs is to facilitate the work to happen. So if we're not there to do it with them in the place of work, we're doing something wrong. And our whole industry has now been built around administrative roles and not production roles. And that's a big problem. Big problem. So
thank you.
Go to Gemba.
Yes, go to the Gemba. Not go to the Gemba, live in the Gemba, be in the Gemba. Like that's where your job needs to be, right? So, any other thoughts?
One of the concepts is you partition it in smaller pieces, so you can also be tracking like this the deviation and more rapidly. Where it's more because if the chunks are bigger, you won't. You just said 1 week is already late. No, I mean. But okay, 50-second cycle times like Toyota. I mean, It's not doable in our industry yet.
Yes, and that goes with the zones too. Like if the zone, like how much work you're supposed to work on, that would just make the duration bigger, right? So it's not just looking at things smaller. It's like what are you passing? So that work package or that wagon, how that is established is based on your zoning. So if your zone is the whole floor or 5 miles of road, or name anything that, you know, you could build and just a lot of it, versus that's the concept of one piece flow. It's like, well, maybe it's not one, but maybe it's not, you know, the whole floor. Maybe there's 4 zones on this floor, and that's smaller. So we're looking at a smaller chunk. So instead of big, aim big, miss big, it's aim smaller, and not to the nth degree and try to get there tonight, because that probably is that's probably a recipe for failure. But how might we start to chunk it smaller? Because then our production will go higher. For anyone that's seen any of the simulations for one piece flow, it's that exact concept. We're trying to get a smaller batch size or less work and pass just that on, just the small things. Instead of, I got the whole floor done, here you go, right? No, it's smaller chunks, right?
Is there some about we are passing to different zones, but maybe the zones are a little bit different each zone. So there is a little setup time at each zone. So someone could say, no, but let me do first all these kind of floors, and because they are all the same, should we use the same concept? Like, no. Diminish your setup time, so you do what's needed to be done. So you just deliver, I mean, floors or areas before, like what the customer needs.
Yeah, and so those are the things to wrestle with, because sometimes it makes sense to do all the areas first that have the most amount of work in them, and then flow the work, and then logistically do the ones that don't have as much work after. Sometimes that doesn't make sense. And I think wrestling with that is part of the Takt planning processes of trying to identify what things we want in what space, or what we have in what space, and how we're going to flow that work, but then also that trade flow or that crew flow from space to space. And to your point, I have an image that I share with people quite often, that within the Takt time, there's more than just the production work that needs to happen, to your point. Like the task planning, the crew huddles, the bend and stretch, the 5S, the inspections, the fixing the defects when we find a QC problem, right? We got to be able to fix that within the Takt time too. And then like the breaks that we have to take, we have to maintain our equipment, buffers. Like there's a lot of things that we would need to think about beyond just the production work, right? So it's more than just, you know, one thing. It's considering all of that, and how do we right level our work, and then also right level the product that we're passing, right, from one trade to the next, or one wagon or one work package to the next, right? Whatever that train looks like. So those are the things to wrestle with when you're building this and establishing it for your first time.
Thank you. So Sergio, I think we are at the time.
We are. If anyone is interested, for anyone that attended today, this online intro course is really great. If you reach out to my email, which we should have in the meeting invite here, and I'll make sure to share it. If you mention that you were on this, if you were on this today, I can get you in free of charge, because I want to just help spread. This gives more how to, like it gives an example and walks through, okay, this is how I would break down this area to show kind of those concepts a little bit more concrete. There's a template that I give, a lot of great content that comes with this course. If you're interested, please reach out and I'll get you a coupon code so that you can go through it for free.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Spencer. It was really great presentation, great introductory course. Thank you so much for your time, for all the knowledge you have shared today with us, with our audience, and hope to continue working together and learning more about Takt Plan, and probably have some other conversations about it. Thank you so much.
I love it. I love it. Thank you to all of you for being here. I appreciate it. And good luck in Argentina. I'm excited to see where we take it in Argentina. So excited to see.
Hopefully we can show you 1 year from now one of our projects doing this.
Yes, I love it. Love it, love it, love it. Let me know if you need help, and on we go.
Great, thank you.
Thank you so much.
See you,
Gente,
everybody.
muchas gracias por
Bye,
haber
Spencer.
atendido.
Thank you very much.
Gracias a todos.
Bye, everybody.
We'll
Bye-bye.
see y'all.